Welcome back to Creative Mathematics and Coding with CodeWorld. You're at Unit 1, Lesson 3, Part 2. In the last part, we reviewed the concept of a function and dug into the syntax or notation that you use to apply functions in your programs. In this part, we'll explore some new functions and expand your abilities to build more interesting and creative programs. You've worked with 4 functions so far. The first one, circle, turns numbers into pictures. Pictures of a circle with that number as their radius. The second, rectangle, takes pairs of numbers and turns them into pictures by giving you a picture of a rectangle with the given width and height. The third function, text, takes words or letters and turns them into a picture by just drawing them. And the final function, drawing of, takes any of those pictures you've used and converts them into a program that just shows you that picture. But these aren't the only 4 functions you have available to you in CodeWorld. Before we look at some new functions, let's understand how these function signatures, like you see here, help you use a function. The rectangle function has this signature. Its domain is ordered pairs of numbers, and its range is pictures. That means that these 2 expressions are good uses of the rectangle function. If you think of them again like a frying pan, inside of that pan you have 2 numbers, which is what the rectangle function needs. These examples, though, are wrong. The example on the left only gives 1 number to the rectangle function, which isn't enough. And the example on the right gives 3 numbers, which is too many. And these examples are wrong for different reasons. On the left, you're using rectangle as just a variable with no arguments at all. That's not right. And on the right, even though rectangle has 2 arguments, they're the wrong type. They're colors instead of numbers. So to correctly use the rectangle function, you have to match both the number of arguments and the types of those arguments. That's what the signature tells you. Now let's look at a signature for a new function, one you haven't seen before, and this function will be called thick circle. Just like rectangle, it expects a pair of numbers and converts them into a picture. So let's consider a few attempts to use this function. Can you tell which of these 3 attempts to use the thick circle function is correct? I'll give you a second to think about it. The first attempt is not correct because it only has 1 argument, and thick circle needs an ordered pair of numbers. The third one is also not correct. It has too many arguments, but the middle one is just right. Without even knowing what the thick circle function does, just by looking at its signature, you can tell how to use it in your programs. Here's why that's important. From within CodeWorld itself, you can get a list of all of the names, variables, or functions that CodeWorld already knows, along with their signatures. If you learn how to interpret these signatures, you'll be able to use new functions and play around. To use this list while you're editing your code, press either Control space or Shift space. You'll see a box like this. To narrow down the choices in the box, type the first few letters of the function that you want. Once you've selected the function, notice how the function gives the full signature, which tells you the types of the arguments and the result of this function. So solid circle needs a number and gives you a picture. Solid rectangle needs 2 numbers. The thick circle function needs 2 numbers and gives you back a picture. And the thick rectangle function needs 3 numbers to give you back a picture. You can choose one of these, provide the 3 numbers, and run the program to see what happens. Now it's your turn. Here are 4 new functions that you have not used before. Thick rectangle and thick circle are just like rectangle and circle, except they're drawn with a thick line instead of a thin one. Solid rectangle and solid circle draw solid shapes that are filled in. Using the signatures, which you can look up from within CodeWorld, you should be able to tell how many arguments these functions expect and what types they should be. As for the meaning of those arguments, you'll have to play around, so experiment and try it out. Once you've figured out what these functions do, you can apply them to spruce up your name tag a little bit. I'll leave you to it. Good luck.